Hey, everybody. Welcome to Money Mysticism. Friday, November 12th, 2021. We have Cindy Olah. Yay, on here today. I think I had told you she was going to be on, and here she is. So excited. Hey, everybody. Oh, I did that. Sorry.
What was that? Oh, did you push a button?
I didn't use my YouTube channel. So I do that sometimes. Anyway, so welcome, Cindy. Cindy has a yoga studio in Marietta, Georgia called Sacred Garden Yoga, which is where we first met a little over 10 years ago. I did a Shaktipat there, and my sister also was going to your studio. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I had family.
I haven't seen her in a while. Is she doing okay?
Yeah, she works for a construction company. So she's doing something cool.
Very cool.
So yeah, when I first put out that I wanted to do this Money and Mysticism show, Cindy said, let me know if you'd like me to help out in any way. So I said, yes, 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 because Cindy's doing a lot of similar work to what I'm doing and working with people on all these different kind of issues, right?
And this one particularly, when you started talking about it, it resonates so deeply in my heart because I feel it, the whole entanglement that we have with money, especially as spiritual teachers or healers. And with everyone that I know too that's in this business, how we have this totally convoluted relationship with money. Even it seems, I mean, everyone kind of does, I guess. They have their own dysfunctions with money, but
yes,
we do. Like nobody else. And I loved that you were doing this.
It's true, because I think, oh, I have so many money issues caught up around men and abuse, whether from this lifetime or last lifetime, and control and all that. And my ex-husband brought up, well, men have a lot of pressure too, because they're expected to be the providers. And so they have all of that side of the equation going. So it's like, yeah, we're all dealing with it from wherever we happen to be sitting in the equation.
Right.
So yeah, so there's just, yes, and being a spiritual person, we're not supposed to want money. Not supposed to talk about money.
Well, that's why I wanted to talk to you too, because that's when my issues with money started. Before, there was two major things that happened in my life. It's interesting that you mentioned the woman part too. There were two things that happened in my life that just shifted my relationship with money around. And one was getting married, and the two was opening up the yoga studio. Those were when my issues began. Before that, in my 20s, and even when I was babysitting, even when I was in high school, I never had any problems with money. I would collect my babysitting money, and I put a down payment on my first car with that.
Wow.
I went,
that's pretty good.
I know, right? And I worked through college, and I paid for my college tuition while I was working. I never got in college debt.
Wow.
I paid my college tuition. After college, I went into the corporate world. It seemed like another lifetime ago within this lifetime. But I was in, doing the corporate thing. I was a mortgage, I was in the credit business. I was like a car underwriter, a mortgage underwriter.
Okay.
And I was making decent money for me. Okay. I wasn't like, but I never felt like I had any issues with money. I purchased a townhome. I had a cute little red convertible. And even though I did, and even though I would I would lose a job, but then they'd give me like this huge severance package. And then I would go into the next job with like money. And so I had lots of money in my savings account.
So
I was still in my 20s.
How was your upbringing around money?
It was middle class. I mean, there was the general sense of that middle class kind of a struggle. We didn't have anything extravagant, and we didn't have any extra bells and whistles, but didn't necessarily feel like there was a lack, but very money conscientious. I mean, I know my mom is not, and they were money conscientious. And when you go shopping on the clearance rack.
Yeah.
You would never pay full price for anything because that was, it was along the lines of that.
Yes.
Yeah. And then I got married. I got married about 20 years ago. And I think what happens, and let me know if this makes any sense to you, but this is the way I've made sense of it in my brain, is when I got married, it's almost like it activated certain patterns that were dormant before. It's almost like when you're a mother, or before, like when you become a mother, you feel these things activate inside of you that were dormant before, that, you've never felt things before until you became a mother. Right. But anyways, I think when I got married, it activated these certain codes, these patterns that were dormant, where when I was very independent, because I grew up, my mom did grow me up to be an independent woman. But something shifted in that idea of independence. It almost deflated, not on purpose. I didn't do it consciously, but I think something subconsciously deflated about that independence when I got married. And on top of that, it was probably maybe 2 years later when I opened up the yoga studio. And there's something, when you become an entrepreneur, that activates things and ideas about money. And on top of,
because you're not getting a paycheck from an established source.
Yeah, it's not steady. That lack of steadiness is gone. And on top of that, it was a business like yoga. It was like the spiritual business. So I think it activated, lifetimes upon lifetimes of perhaps doing this kind of work before. And like you were talking about, we're not supposed to talk about money. We're not supposed to make, it, because I never felt any of that stuff.
Wow.
In my 20s. All of my issues began.
It's really interesting.
With getting married. And I'm not blaming my husband, obviously. Like I said, I think it just, it did something internally within me. And opening up the yoga studio. And that is when my true lessons and like some of these other patternings came out that sent me on this grand adventure with money. So all that money that I had saved up, it's like $30,000-$40,000 probably, which was a good chunk for me. It was gone probably within a year. And then,
so you stopped working when you got married? You stopped working?
No, I didn't stop working when I got married, but I got I worked until I opened up the yoga studio. So the marriage and that came in pretty close to one another.
Right.
But I do feel like it did the marriage part, where before I was more independent, I think I felt more like, oh, well, I can just rely on him now, which I think it did put extra pressure on him. But it was not something that I did on purpose. It's just something that happened. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to open up this yoga studio, but I can depend on him. So I went from like independent to feeling more dependent. So it was almost like, how people get older, they usually get more strong with money. It was different. I was strong when I was younger. When I got older is when all my lessons came in.
Yeah, well, I can say for me, I was pretty independent financially when I was younger. Although, relationships, I date really wealthy people. And then it was like, oh, well, that's going to be my support system now. And then I'd go back to making my own money. So I had that also when I was younger, but there was always just something not right about it. And I think that as I got older, I couldn't do some of those things that I was doing when I was younger to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
They became inaccessible. And even just working a job anymore, it was like, I can't go work a job. I can't do that.
Right.
So then everything shifts. Then you really just have to get a completely different perspective on it when you recognize that you can no longer do these things. I don't know. That was my experience.
Right. Yeah. It's then suddenly you have to look really honestly about the relationship that you have with it. I mean, it really brings up all the deeper wounds when you make those kind of realizations and those kind of shifts.
Yeah.
And I know some of the ones, I even wrote down a couple of them because I was preparing a little bit mentally about our conversation. And so besides the one from getting married and, like having that sense of, well, maybe I don't need to work as hard, or I don't need to be as, and I can see though, where that puts a lot of pressure on. When you were talking about your ex-husband, they feel a lot of pressure with it.
Mm-hmm.
And that was an unnecessary pressure. That was undue pressure. They said that was like me going through, through some of my stuff. And yeah, and then when you have a business like a yoga studio, there are like what we do, or, and I don't even think it's just that. I think it's in general, the way the collective views how much you charge. For instance, I would get, if I would lower, there was, I went through a little period, a couple of years ago where I dropped my rates actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I was charging maybe like $11 for a drop-in class. And you would get all this praise and all this recognition and saying, oh, I love what you're doing here. I love that you're making this more accessible to people. And you get that kind of praise. Whereas if you actually start charging what you're really worth, then suddenly you don't get that praise anymore. Suddenly you're like, well, now you're just being greedy or something, It's not greed. It's just you want to be able to pay the mortgage and you want to pay the electric bill and you want to put food on the table, right?
Yes.
But I think there's that part of conditioning where you get praise for making things more available and more accessible. And so there's like this collective conditioning about that. And I think that was one thing I really had to look and see within myself, where I was falling for it. Like, I was like, oh yeah, I'm doing this, so I must be doing a good thing because everyone is telling me that I'm doing a good thing.
Oh my God, I know. I've done that with my session prices over the years. I go from just no price at all, give me whatever you want, to like setting a price, to going to a lower price, to going to a higher, because it's just been so confusing for me. And you do get feedback from people. I can remember this guy in LA was like, you get more than my doctor gets. Did you go to school? This whole dialogue. I'm like, look, if you like it, keep coming. You can afford it. If you don't keep coming. But yeah, and so then it just creates this crazy mind game of how should I be doing this? And then if I do say, it doesn't matter, just pay me whatever you want, and I get a really low amount, and I know I just put my all into the session, and I know this person just like energetically got so much from the session, then I feel weird. Like it wasn't a complete exchange. Like this wasn't, it wasn't an equal exchange. Not that it needs to be, like, I don't mean that it needs to be that, but sometimes it would just feel weird. So I've tossed it around so many times. These ideas.
I have too.
And then you don't want to disclude people if they honestly can't afford it. But there are some people that say they can't afford it when they can. It's like they don't want to tap into this account or that account or whatever, I'm like, look, I'm trying to pay for food for my kids. So
I know.
Struggle.
Yeah, that was a big realization for me, how much I just wanted approval from people. And when I didn't get the approval, that it affected, like it affected my psyche in a way, like I was being a bad person. I wasn't being good, or I shouldn't know, I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, what I should be doing. Because in our line of work, we should be easily available. And I'm with you. When you do some of those big energetic clearings or workings with someone, it's I mean, if I do 2 in a day, I'm exhausted. That's
Me
it. That's
too.
my maximum.
Mhm.
1 is good, but realizing how much it actually, what it takes. And it's not that we're giving our energy, because when you think of energy work or any energy healing, it's not necessarily that you're depleting yourself, but it's that you're a vessel. And when that information gets changed, it still has to move through your body. And it has an effect on you physically.
Right.
And the amount of work it takes too to be able to navigate through people's internal landscape, especially if you're trying to find pieces and parts of themselves that they don't even know exists. It's a process. And it's not necessarily like, I love doing it. I absolutely, I feel,
Yeah,
I'm sure you feel this way too.
Yeah.
It's probably like your highest calling. You want to do it. It's a service that you enjoy doing it. And I don't complain about it at all. But there is like, you're giving your time,
Like there's a
time
level of respect
yeah,
that needs
right,
to be
exactly.
there. Because if someone just says, oh, I'm going to come check this out and I'm going to give you $40 or, and then that feels awful when you finish the session. Like that was not
right.
That was not it. It was just not, I don't know. It wasn't fully there. I made a video actually about that. Like, if you want to work with me, I need you really to watch my videos and connect in with me and make sure you really want to make the investment to work with me and all of that. To try and avoid those situations. But so what have you found? How are you working with it?
Well, I set my pricing, and I set it and I realized that, it might not be available for everyone, but I also realized that the people who make the investment, that they're all in, they're ready. Those are the people that I get. Whereas before, you would, perhaps you'd get some people you're like, I'm not so sure. Or there might be a slight feeling of entitlement there. You know what I mean? And do you really want this? Are you really willing to do the work? Because, they have to do the work. You're just helping them along, but the work is theirs. They have to do it.
Yeah.
And not only that, and I really believe this, it's an investment in themselves. When someone decides to invest in themselves, the universe is going to open up to them. So, they might be, paying me the money, but the investment is going all into them. They're claiming that they're worthy of receiving this and that they're worthy of that money. And that in itself, I think, is a healing for that person. It's a healing for them to realize that they're worth it, that their well-being, that their health, their mental health, whatever they're going through, it's worth that. If they can spend $5 to $7 on a cup of coffee, that's going to, what's that really going to do for them every single day? but then not put that money towards something, that can really energetically help them.
Yeah.
And that was a teaching for me, that was a teaching that I had to learn for myself. And when I decided I'm going to invest in myself.
Exactly.
And I think that was a big lesson for me to take in is, well, if I'm expecting or if I'm wanting someone to like invest in themselves, am I doing it for myself?
Exactly. Yeah.
But
I mean,
I think that's where a lot of this, the relationship with your relationship with money shifts with all these ideas.
I went to the retreat last week, and it was probably over $4,000 for 3 days. And I knew it was worth it. It's like, I knew it was worth it. I knew I was worth it. And so, yeah, you do it. And so then I have to switch that mindset to, well, if someone knows it's really worth it and they really want to do the work, they'll make the commitment and they'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, love. My daughter just walked in.
Yeah, and don't touch right there because that's
Okay, we're right in the middle of a live stream.
sorry. Please, I didn't mod pods.
Okay. Why don't you show me after? Okay, thank you. It's all right. Thank you. Crafts. Yeah. So, but the other thing that I'm working on is just recognizing that it's not really like, not even making it need to come from the work. Like, it's like, okay, I'm doing my work. And this is what people always say in the spiritual world. And I wonder, and I want to know how many people are saying this, are actually experiencing this. If you fully go for it and you fully make the commitment to do the work, the universe is going to provide for you. I'm sure you've heard that one, right?
Yeah, well, I'm thinking like what kind of, you're talking about when you do your life purpose, your life work, that the universe will provide for you.
Yeah, you make the commitment, you just say, I'm going to do it.
No, honestly, I don't know if I do or not, because I've done that.
I have too. So that's why I'm like,
because I've been doing this for 18 years. I know you've been doing this for a long time. I've been doing this for 18 years. So I've had my ebbs and flows, and I've experimented with it all. It's like I've gone through all those different phases of it, or a lot of those phases of it anyways. And if you still haven't reconciled your relationship with yourself and your worthiness, you can do whatever the hell you want to do. And if you still have some kind of feeling of lack inside of you, it's not going to matter. I mean, the lack is going to come back around. That's what I think. That's what I believe. I don't know. What do you believe?
Well, I don't know what I believe, because I've experienced it from all ends. And
right.
You hear people that get into like Joe Dispenza's work or Abraham Hicks or whatever, and they go, okay, I'm going to do this. And within a month or two, they manifest $100,000, You're like, huh. Okay. I've tried that so many times, over and over and over and over.
There was probably an alignment within each one of those people, though, where they manifested the $100,000. They were aligned to $100,000. I can say that I can honestly say that my mindset probably wasn't aligned to $100,000, even though I was trying to get it. The frequency wasn't there for me. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what, isn't that part of all those teachings, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's more than just offering the service. It's alignment with what you want to receive.
Absolutely. And clearing out all that junk. And I mean, that's why I just keep going deeper and deeper and deeper into it, because I'm like, this is one of my major life lessons. I've been working on it for so long. And when you get to this point where it's almost like you want to give up, because you've approached it from every possible angle, but I can't give up. Like, I can't give up. A shift has to happen in my life, so I can't give up. And all these
Mhm.
people at the retreat, I was telling my story to, and they're like, well, maybe you need to just stop trying. And I'm like, no, I've tried that too. I've tried the not
And
trying.
it didn't work, right? That is hilarious. I feel you. I am right there with you, sister. And I think it's also a lesson for me. And I think it's also, while we go through the process with it within this lifetime, giving a little bit of grace for ourselves through the process, that
Right.
because it's hard to go into the idea that you're not broken or what's wrong with me.
Mm-hmm.
Like what you're talking, well, they did it, so why can't I do it? What's wrong with me? And I
Yeah.
think that just takes you down a whole other different kind of a spiral.
Yes. Yes. I think I've hopefully gotten past that one, but I know what
Right.
you mean. It's that no, I mean, when you work with enough people, you recognize that we're all on such different paths, and we all came in with such different stories and different karma or whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'm at the point where I don't necessarily do that trip. Like, well, they got it in a month. What's wrong with no? I'm just like,
Mm-hmm.
well, I have something here that's just
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it is. It's a mystery to me. And I can't say it's not getting better. It's getting better. I mean, there's no doubt that it's getting better. That I can go to a $3,000 retreat. That wouldn't have been possible 10 years ago.
Right. Oh, I
So,
agree. I mean, mine has definitely gotten better too, but I know what it's like to be at the bottom. So
mhm.
I can relate to those feelings and those emotions. And I know what it's like to come up, and I know what it's like to feel more abundant. But I certainly know, and if you're trying to figure it out, because you're trying to figure it out, and I'm trying to figure out. You ask all the questions, like you go into it, and
Yeah.
and it said I got a list here of some of the things that I've like the ideas and the blockages and the misconceptions and of several that I've had to work through, and I still feel like I'm processing, like I don't feel like I'm complete with it, but there's so
Go
many.
for it. Tell me everything you listed, because let's talk about it.
Do you want to go through some? Well, the first one you've already mentioned in a way is that that it's unholy, that money is unholy, that and I think that's a popular narrative that's going around right now, with the idea of the matrix. There's a lot of talk about the matrix, and the matrix that we're sucked in, and that money is a part of the matrix.
Right. Yeah.
You see what I mean? That money is unholy, it's corrupt.
That 1% thing.
The 1% has the population, and then the other ones who don't have money are suffering, and we're working to try to make money, and then the working to make money is taking up your time and keeping you from being unhappy, because you're working for money instead of money working for you, and then all that sucks your energy. You can't be present.
Yeah.
That whole concept, and I get it, because I think that money can do that for sure if you're following that narrative.
Exactly. That's the key, if you're following, but we're not choosing to step into that 3D realm.
Yeah. And I think that's what I realized, is that there's just a whole bunch of crazy, convoluted narratives about money.
Yes.
And you can choose to believe it.
Right.
That's why we're here having this earthly experience, is we can choose to believe and follow whatever narrative we want to. And we can attach strongly to a particular narrative if that feels like that's where we're at. But you can also dissolve a narrative just like that if it's no longer serving you.
Mhm.
I don't think we realize how powerful we are and how you can dissolve a narrative or an illusion or, or collective ideas very easily by deciding whether you're going to buy into it or not.
Yes, that's the big one right now. That's so big right now.
We become attached, I think, too,
Mhm.
attached to those stories,
Yes.
attached to, sometimes we become attached to our own poverty, even like that narrative right there about the matrix. If you are on the side of where you are struggling, it's very easy to, there's like a juicy feeling to blaming other people. It's like, yes, let's just blame all them. And
Yes.
there's like a self-righteousness to that, it feeds an egoic part of you that you even become, I think, attached to that feeling.
That's something
if you were to let it go, then what? Then you'd have to be responsible. You can't blame somebody else anymore for it. Then you'd have to be responsible. Then that would suck even worse.
That's something I didn't like about the Matrix movie, because all the people that were outside of the Matrix, they were like eating this gross food and living in these like really bad, it wasn't a nice life. Why would you want to be outside of the Matrix?
Like, if we want to step outside of the Matrix, make the space outside of the Matrix. But I think part of that, though, is, the wars that go on. Like, when you really actually start to see what's going on and how much you're being disillusioned and like you're like puppet strings, I don't know. That's a whole different conversation.
But I'm thinking stepping outside of the Matrix, where we're not in that system anymore. We're more in like a world of unicorns and light beings. And
yeah, well, me too. That's what I prefer. When I think we're outside of the Matrix, we're not fighting this war anymore, or maybe if there is something like that, you dissolve it in an instant, because that's how powerful you are.
Yeah.
And I think that's where realizing that, and it's still a work in progress. I mean, I can talk to you about it very rationally, logically, and we're like, yeah, all you have to do is dissolve it. But how easy is it to actually do that? It's so easy to get caught back up into our stories and into those roles that we play.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's really easy to get caught back up into those narratives because they're recognized, we know them, they've been so entrenched that it's easy to fall back. It's easy to fall back into them.
Absolutely. Yeah. And one of the biggest teachings that comes through me all the time is, and it's the one that I grapple with the most, is that it's already here. Just point blank. Yeah. It's already here. Everything you need is already here. All the money you need is already here. And
abundance is here already.
I used to get frustrated. I'd argue with God. I'd be like, I just, and now I just, every time the divine says that to me, I just try to sink further into that and go, okay, something in me knows this is true. And something in me is going to find that as true.
And if what will help me every now and again, if I can come back to this thought, like when I'm caught in that space that you're talking about, is when I'm not experiencing the abundance that's available to me right now, am I in my highest self?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not experiencing the abundance. So what part of me am I experiencing right now? What part of the story, what part of me not being in my highest self is expressing itself where it can't see the abundance? Yes. Like what part of my character, or what or patterning, or what role that I'm playing, it's not my highest self.
Or it would be, you'd be experiencing the abundance.
Right, but it's another part of me that's come out. And
Yeah.
whenever I can stop and look and ask that question, and I can see, oh, well, that's this part of me that's coming out right now.
Mm.
That's why I'm not experiencing the abundance, because what I've found, and you can let me know what you think about this, like this little hypothesis of mine, is all these constructs that we have, that we make up. Like, for instance, if you have the construct of the dependent wife, or the struggling spiritual person
Mhm.
who can't make money because I'm in the spiritual business.
Right.
So, you know, and if you're fully in that construct, if you think of how that construct originated, it originated from fear, or maybe, or from untruth, maybe from misinformation. It
Mm.
originated from thoughts that were not true.
Mhm.
So therefore, can that part of you even know abundance? Like, can that construct even know abundance? It's probably not even possible
Right.
for that
Yeah.
construct to know abundance, because it was built off of lies.
Mm-hmm.
And what I realized is that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to make a construct based out of fear, know abundance, when she will never know abundance, because she is always, she's like a lie in a way, you know, it's not based off of it. So it's like, you know what, I can't expect that part of me to know abundance. I have to step into my higher knowing, my inner master.
Yes, that's so
the
good.
Part of me that know, and then I can align up with it. But if I'm trying to get a part of me that only knows lack,
yes,
to try to know abundance, she will never know lack, she will never know abundance, because her construct is lack.
Yes. Yes,
Anyway.
and then it's the struggle between the higher self and that self, because that self, that self thinks it's really spiritual and it's really doing the right thing.
And that's just a construct too, right? It's a construct of like fake light, I think. It's like a fake light, not even a true light.
Yeah.
Like you trying to be light, but it's not even true light.
Yes. I used to go to this Buddhist place for a little. I just couldn't keep going because that belief was so strong. And I remember once she said to me something like, I used to have long, beautiful hair like you, but I shaved it off because, you know, basically shaming me for having long hair. And then, and then one time she was talking about how one of the students chose to get rid of all her stuff. She just had a few articles of clothing. And when her husband slept on the soft, comfy bed, she chose to sleep on the hardwood floor. And isn't that great? And I just went, no, that is not great. No.
That sounds really terrible. You're not selling me on this.
I can't keep coming here. This is so just backing up my old programs. This is not good. But yes, that's it. So then you're praised by the really high priest, you know, someone who got really, really, really high in their order for being really in lack. And my guru used to say that you don't need a pillow, just sleep on the hardwood floor. And, you know, I've attracted that a lot in my experience. But I like pillows. I like soft, comfy beds.
Right, I know. And I can understand the idea where money can corrupt. You know, we talked about that, I think, a little bit on the last video, because it can. I mean, that's, you know, money, I think it's a neutral force, kind of like magic. Like if you tap into the force of magic, you can use magic for ritual and ceremonies that's good and enlightening, or you could use magic to do very nefarious and malefic things, because it's a source of power. And it's, I think, you know, money has the capability to corrupt people, and it has corrupted people in the past, you know, and it still corrupts people. And as a spiritual person, this was another thing that resonated with me, at least with, because that was something that I had to struggle with. I mean, I don't know if you did, but I had to struggle with, or I struggled with the idea that, oh, well, I'm just, you know, that money is a corrupting force and all this stuff. And so you just have to be really careful with how, but it, you know, it jacks up your relationship with money then.
I think the thing that I did was, well, if I have a lot of money, will I get drawn off my spiritual path? I think that was probably what would go through my head sometimes. Like, oh my God, what if I suddenly have lots of money? Will I just stop being spiritual?
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, because there's this association that you can't be spiritual and have money, because you've even seen it with some people who were spiritual, because you see examples of it. You know,
Right.
You see examples of people who have done nefarious things, who were supposedly, you know, on the high road and helping people, and then they do go, you know, they just go, they're you know, they have their own human experience with it, and they do maybe not so some very good things out of, you know, the power and or the money.
But one
And
must
so
ask if that was already inherent within them.
yeah, right. It's almost like money is a magnifier.
Mm.
You know, that or it has the capacity to be a magnifier, to magnify what's inherently within them.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yes, because as we're seeing with so many spiritual teachers these days, there's just so much that's coming out about.
Yeah, and then there's a fear of becoming that. You're like you said, oh, well, you want to protect yourself from that, and so you become very, very careful with it.
Yeah, wow, that's a big one.
So yeah, I would say that's, you know, that all goes back to the corruption, and I think partially for me is just acknowledging that sure, it has a corrupting nature, but it doesn't have to be, you know.
No.
Just because other people doesn't mean that I'm going to do that. But I think it does require you to keep doing your, you know, your internal work and seeing where you are with things, how you're doing with life.
Yeah. And if you're starting from a pure place, so like always, you know, I mean, doing the work, doing the dirty work, doing it. So you know that you're starting from a pure place. And I think I'm at the point now where I'm like, okay, you know what? Even if I did have to have an experience like that, can we just have it? Can we just do it and have it and not just keep putting it off? You know, whatever experiences I need to have, I want to have them. I'm ready to have them now. And I mean, I have ideas about if I had a lot of money, I would do this, and this, you know, like make big apartment buildings for the homeless and all this. Whether all that would happen, I don't know if I would actually do all those things, but that's where my mind goes mostly when I think about large amounts of money. It'd be, you know,
and I think, you know, what's the funny thing though, it's like, I think people, like spiritual people, have to do that so that we can be okay with making lots of money. We have to come up with a reason and say, well, if I make lots of money, then I'm going to save the world. It's like, that's where we have to go to be okay with making money.
Yeah. I really do though have like a very strong, like I like for certain things that I want to help so badly, and homeless is one
of of course. Yeah.
So for me it is, and that's even I've talked genuine about this in other videos where like walking by a homeless person who's, you know, is sleeping on the street and it might be really cold out and you're walking into a really nice hotel room. That's always been very hard for me. You know, it's hard. And I know like this is their path and they're going through what they're going through, but if I could help in some way, I would, that's a big one for me. And animals, homeless people, there are certain things that just pull me like, oh.
Yeah, they tug at your heart for sure. And I think that's also that is part. I totally understand the what you were talking about with the homeless, because I'd be the same way. I'd feel guilty, then you start to feel guilty for the wealth that you do have, because you see so many other people that don't have the wealth. And it doesn't feel right walking into a luxurious hotel when you know someone down the street is struggling.
Yeah,
and empaths, I think, especially struggle with that one. Just struggling with the idea that you have, the guilt, possibly. Well, I knew that I felt guilty anyways. That's, me speaking personally, that there was just something that felt off balance. And then not to say that that isn't true. I mean, there is a certain sense of off balance to that. But
I don't know if it's like guilt anymore as much as responsibility. Like, I feel like if we're living in this 3D world and we have the means to help those who maybe don't have the means to help themselves, because really, I mean, probably a lot of homeless people are dealing with mental struggles, whatever addictions, whatever, coming from who knows what kind of situations they're coming from. It's almost like, if we have the means to help, we're all one. Why wouldn't we help if we have the means to help? Danny was talking something about that the other day, like all these people with billions of dollars and, not helping people. I'm like, how could you not help? How could you not? How could you have that much money and look around the world and not help?
I know. Yeah.
It's just, it just seems like an obvious one, but I don't know. I
don't know. Yeah, I don't know what if there's like a good answer for that one.
I know. And it's all this, I just, for me, so much is coming up with the 3D reality right now, that just so many things that just we've learned to live with. Whatever, rape and molestation and kidnapping and all these things, we go, oh, it's just part of society. And I'm like, no,
it doesn't have to be, right?
It's not right. It's just not like, when do we get to the point as humanity where we just go, no, that's not right. Women shouldn't have to walk around being in fear. Mothers shouldn't have to walk, be afraid to let their child walk to school. Like, these things are coming up so strongly for me right now. Like, we've always just accepted, almost just said, okay, well, that's the way it is. But no, it's wrong. It's not the way it's not.
It doesn't, it certainly doesn't have to be that way, for sure. They're based off of, choices that are being made.
And so the money thing fits into that, with like single mothers, single parents, and all of that. Go ahead.
I don't know. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but then you get caught up in, what's my part? What can I do? What kind of difference can I make? And and then the idea that, well, if I make money, then I can start to make a bigger difference in life. And I know that's what motivates a lot of people too, that do the kind of work that we do. Just like you said, if I can make money to help people. But I think it's also okay to say, I want to make money because I want to feel more free in my own life too.
Absolutely.
I think we have to accept both, that you want it for, yes, you want it for humanity, but it's also admitting, and I think that's the part with the mysticism and the spirituality, is that you're not supposed to admit that you want it for yourself. That you have to admit that it's got to be for somebody or for some bigger cause, which there's nothing, yes, for a bigger cause, but you can't admit that you want it for yourself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's true. That's true. And that is my first goal, get into a really nice house with my kids and have a nice car and give them all the experiences they want to have. Like that's number one for me.
Yeah.
Like that's the baseline, I guess.
Right. And that's beautiful, and there's nothing wrong with wanting that. And I think that's where we're trying to step into, right? Is trying to break all the narratives and programs that says that, well, you shouldn't want it for yourself because you're being selfish now. You should be selfless. So, yeah. That's a big one.
So we have 5 or 10 minutes left. So tell me everything you want to say. I'm just going to listen.
Oh yeah, that a lot of it just goes along the same line, that it's inappropriate for a healer to make money, that it's unholy. We already talked about getting praise, and the whole matrix thing. What else? Let me turn the page. I turned the page now.
You were journaling. Were you journaling?
I know. I was like, oh, this is good for me. I think we pretty much covered some of the main things just organically by talking about it. And then at the end, the way I finalized it is that it's a matter of just deciding. One more other thing was, I think as empaths, we feel, we know that someone had to work really hard to earn their money.
Oh.
And I think getting comfortable with the idea that we're taking that away, even though we're giving something, but the idea that we're taking something away that someone worked really hard for, we're sensitive to that. I'm sensitive to that.
Yeah, that just triggered me. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah.
And that's another one, is getting comfortable with the idea that yes, there is, you're taking someone's hard-earned money. I mean, you're giving them something in return,
right?
But that idea of taking, or being okay with the receiving, or we think of it as taking and not as receiving, perhaps, and so we get uncomfortable with asking. We shouldn't ask for it because we're taking someone's hard-earned money, and that just doesn't feel good in my heart. So
that's a good one. That is definitely a good one.
Yeah.
So where have you come to with it? Where are you, and what, I don't know, what good knowledge do you have about how, you've gotten to where you are with it?
I think it was just the exploration, realizing those things, doing the deeper work and understanding those were my programs that I didn't even realize that I had. And I think it's just a matter of realizing those triggers and things for you. But I think, some of these are things that we share as an entrepreneur, especially in this kind of business, that we can relate to these things. And it's a matter of realizing that those are narratives, and that you do deserve. I mean, you deserve to have good things, that you deserve to have nice things. Even you don't have to sleep on a rock.
that makes you closer to God.
No, that's what I was about to say, that just because you're sleeping on a rock, you're closer to God. And if you're living in a decent house, that you fall and descended to hell somehow.
Yes.
And it is just breaking those ideas and those narratives, and that you're worth it, that we're worth it, that we deserve to have good things to take care of ourselves. And yes, we can save the planet, but I think just acknowledging that you deserve it just for you.
Yes.
Too. You know what I mean? That you don't have, yes, you can save the planet, but you have wanting to do it for yourself is a good reason.
Yeah.
Is just as good of a reason as anything else.
Which comes to loving yourself is just as valuable as loving somebody else, right?
Right. Yeah.
Doing good deeds for yourself is just as good as doing good deeds for someone else.
And as long as we stay aligned with spirit, and I hear you say this, you know, as long as we stay aligned with spirit and we listen to that voice, we're gonna get guided, I think, in the right directions that it'll keep us from doing nefarious things.
Yeah.
And it will keep us where we're able to take care of others, but we can take care of ourselves as well. And, you know, sometimes the struggle is coming back into the ego or back into those old narratives. And we want to believe that more, like that
Right.
knows better than our higher self. And if we could just, you know, I think if we go into the guidance of our inner wisdom, that I don't think our inner wisdom wants us to be poor and miserable. I mean, I don't get that from mine.
Not me, never. Never. I mean, I do
Right.
all these shows on money and mysticism. It's like, allow yourself to allow it in, allow yourself to have it. It's God. Money is the energy of God. It's the energy of love. It's no different.
Right.
So,
But we just created all these other beliefs about it, that it's corrupt and I mean, sure, it can be, but it doesn't have to be.
yeah, we can put corruption onto it,
Yeah,
but it's just an energy. It's just
Right.
an energy.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny what you said, because I was thinking, I've thought of that before. I'm like, really, Kai? I ask the divine about every choice I make in my life. Do I really think it's going to change once I have money? Like, I'm just going to stop asking.
Right.
Do something.
It's funny, this play between how we go into, you know, our humanity that's so full of imagination
Oh my goodness.
and
Wow,
can
Cindy,
create all sorts of narratives and stories.
that hour
Yes.
went very quickly.
That did go by quick.
Britt and Sophia, thank you for being here. Sophia was on an earlier show. And if anybody else wants to say hi, I have to take Tico to his rehearsal, so I have to leave in like 2 minutes. But anybody who's here, thank you for being with Cindy and I. We could probably talk about that for a lot longer, but that was
Yeah.
good. Thank you for opening up and sharing and having the discussion.
Well, I think it starts by having the conversation, right? Because that's another thing, is we're afraid to talk about it. It's inappropriate to talk about money.
Yep. It is. Which leads to uncomfortableness with saying, this is how much I charge, you know, and somebody else saying, well, I can't afford that, honestly, or I can afford that. Or if you can't just have this comfortable conversation because everything's made so uncomfortable around it.
Right. Yeah. So thanks for having me on and for having this, creating the space for the conversations.
Yeah.
The uncomfortable, what can be uncomfortable for
I mean, maybe this is part of my work. Maybe this is why it's such a big struggle for me, because I'm, you know, it's part of my work. Because if I just had it, if it was not an issue for me, I probably wouldn't be doing this show or talking about it. You know, it had to become a really big issue for me to start talking about it.
Well, that's what they say, right? Your poison becomes your sweetest nectar.
Yeah.
Your fall is what forges the path to your strongest self. You have to fall first, because you got to take the path up to, you know, the strongest self. So yeah, your poison is your sweet nectar, your gift.
That's it. There you go. That's what I'm going to walk away with.
That's right. Mine too. Yeah.
Thanks, Cindy. I love you.
Thank you. Love you too.
And we'll talk soon.
Yes.
All right. Bye, everybody. Sophia, Britt, anybody else that's here. We'll be
Thank you.
fixing
Thank
soon.
you. All
Bye.
right.